Hey, I'm Jenny Hale. We've been talking a bit about trauma lately, and it's pretty clear that most people are aware of big T trauma these days, PTSD, wars, victims of crime, stuff like that. But a lot of people still don't really have a lot of awareness about the small T trauma. That's the more subtle trauma. It's not so obvious. It often arises from things that happened very early in life, things we don't really remember, things that have caused some of those pretty intense childhood emotions that were unresolved at the time and have been suppressed. And what happens is something will happen here and now, today, that resonates in some way. It's associated, it reminds us, and these childhood emotions start trying to come to the surface. And at that point, we will make a response. And the four main categories of responses we have are fight, flight, freeze, and fall. So today I'm going to talk about freeze, and you can find the other videos talking about the other ones, because freeze is one of the least well understood of these responses. It's pretty obvious when someone's getting aggressive and adrenalized and into fight mode. It's pretty obvious when someone's like avoiding, trying to get away, in flight mode. But when somebody goes into freeze, obviously if it's a complete freeze and they're not moving and not talking, that's obvious. But mostly it's a more subtle version of freeze. So people will, for example, just zone out. So you'll be talking to them and they're actually somewhere else. They're not really processing what you're saying. So if people don't remember what you've said or don't hear what you've said quite regularly, they may be zoning out and dissociating in the middle of conversation, which means they're having some kind of trauma response. Something in the situation is reminding them of some childhood thing they haven't yet processed. Often if people freeze, they will feel numb. They may even avoid other people just because the effort of talking to people is a bit much when you're in a partial freeze state. You just don't want to do anything. And it's also really difficult to make a decision. If you have the freeze response going on, the parts of your system, the prefrontal cortex that gets involved in making decisions, is not very active. So it's really difficult. You lose your executive function and decision-making capabilities. So if you feel stuck, if you often feel stuck or you feel like you're stuck in life for a long period of time at some kind of level, you may have a low-level freeze response going on. And if that's the case, the answer is to actually resolve and release some of those painful childhood emotions to get them out of your system, because then they won't be triggering the freeze response and you'll have a lot more freedom of movement and a lot more energy and a lot more capacity to get stuff done. So if this reminds you of you or someone in your life, I recommend you join our trauma masterclass. Get all the lowdown on what trauma is, how it's caused, how it gets resolved, how you can support other people to resolve it, and how you can resolve it for yourself. And that way you can get free from the stuckness and the frustration and the self-criticism that comes with being in a partial freeze state for sometimes years at a time.